Hey guys, today I will give you my picks for the top 10 worst superhero movies. For this list, we're going over some of the worst superhero movies that have been made ever. And there's no limit, they can be both Marvel and DC. Alright. But there might be some spoilers ahead, so spoiler alert. Number 10, Elektra. Kicking off our list is the movie about the Marvel assassin who is also the love interest to Daredevil. This film actually takes place after the Daredevil movie where Elektra actually dies in it. So it ignores the storyline to start with. It's terrible acting, terrible costume designs, and terrible script writing as well. It's overall a terrible movie made in 2005. But as far as action sequences go, they weren't so bad, but they weren't very appealing to fans. Number 9, Spider-Man 3. The third installment of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy is by far the worst one. In this one, we see the Sandman and Venom make an appearance. While the Sandman is quite exceptional, Venom on the other hand is downright awful. As in the comics, Peter Parker ends up with the Venom symbiote first, but instead of making him irrash and quite aggravated and violent to people, it ends up making him a complete douchebag. Making him be a complete twat to Mary Jane and to everyone, and also giving him an emo look. But when it does finally manifest Venom, he is nothing like him at all. He's too small, he has no appealing features of Venom to him, and he refers to himself as I instead of we. He doesn't even sound like Venom anyway. It's a completely terrible film, but thankfully we'll be getting the proper Venom in cinemas this year, and it's actually coming out this week. I've just got to see that, I have to. Number 8, Steel. This movie, made in 1997, is about the DC superhero Steel, who is basically DC's answer to Marvel's Iron Man. Starring Shaquille O'Neal as the titular superhero Steel, he actually looks nothing like the character does in the comics. Yes, they got the hammer, but that's about it. Steel is actually a superhero with a red cape and with rocket boots, and he has an S on his chest, much like Superman, but way better because he's not Superman. It's terrible acting, terrible costume designs. It's an all-round terrible film, but you have to admit that Shaquille O'Neal, even though he's a great athlete, he's also a pretty good actor. This just wasn't the role for him. Number 7, Daredevil. Now we get to one of the worst ones. In 2003, starring Ben Affleck as Daredevil, Jennifer Garner starting her role as Elektra, and Colin Farrell as Bullseye. This film is just filled with terrible points all round. With terrible acting, costumes, sound design, way too much CGI. Terrible script writing as well. The way that they made Daredevil's suit made it look like it was too tight and too uncomfortable, which is a good thing. We have the series on Netflix, which is 100 times better. But the thing that probably bugged me the most was Bullseye. He doesn't even look anything like him. Yes, he's an assassin that, with his costume, has a bullseye on his forehead. But he had no costume. Just a trench coat, a black t-shirt, and a bullseye burnt on his forehead. Number 6, Fantastic Four, 2015. An attempt to revamp the Fantastic Four movies. It completely backfired. It crashed and burned, even worse than some of the other films that are on this list. It had good intentions, but it ultimately ended up sucking so much. With terrible acting, terrible costume design as well. They cast Michael B. Jordan to play the Human Torch, even though the Human Torch isn't black, and they kept Sue Storm a white girl. But terrible acting choices as well. Michael B. Jordan is great in Black Panther, though. He's brilliant in that. But this was overall just a terrible movie filled with so much torture you couldn't even watch till the end. Number 5, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Now, if I could, I'd put every Superman movie on here, especially Superman Returns, but not Man of Steel, actually. Or Batman v Superman, even though there's a Batman one as well. But by far the worst Superman movie is number 4. It's filled with terrible script writing, and at what point did Superman have an ability that allows him to reconstruct buildings? Seriously, he fires lasers out of his eyes and reconstructs the Great Wall of China. It's terrible costumes, sound editing, and even acting. With Nuclear Man in it as well. Number 4, Fantastic Four, 2004. 5, sorry. Now we have the first Fantastic Four film. The one that started off most of the terrible films we have. This film is just, all in all, so terrible, I can't even express it. Especially the way they made the Thing look. It made him look like he was all crammed together. He didn't even look relatively enough like him. It's not a very good idea to have him look like that, to be honest. It's terrible acting and costumes as well. If you ask me, some of it was to exploit Jessica Alba's sexuality as well, even though she's really hot. But I just can't sit and watch this film anymore. I've tried multiple times, and that even goes double for the sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, which ruined Galactus as well. It's just all in all a bad film. Both of them. Number 3, Catwoman. Now we get to one of the worst ones ever made. Casting Halle Berry as Catwoman would have been a good idea if they had stuck to the source material. But they basically revamped it completely. Not in a good way, actually. The costume is nothing like it is in the comics. It's completely terrible. It was pretty much just an excuse to get Halle Berry into a skin-tight leather suit that is insanely revealing. All the way down to the ripped leather pants. But by far it is one of the worst ever made, and her name isn't even Selena Kyle in the film. It doesn't even take place in Gotham City. And there's no references to Batman or Gotham at all. Halle Berry actually received a Razzie Award for this. It was the first one she's ever had. But she's brilliant in the X-Men. Number 2, Green Lantern. Now we get serious. Green Lantern is by far one of the biggest screw-ups in movie history. There's so much CGI, it's like you're living in a computer. It is absolutely atrocious. It is so terrible, I can't even see straight. It would have made sense to use a little bit of CGI in the film, but not enough that covers his entire suit. With Ryan Reynolds playing Hal Jordan, it would have been good, but the whole thing was a complete balls up. And the way they made Parallax look as well. He looks nothing like he does in the comics. He looks like a giant yellow cloud. But terrible acting, costume design, I just can't even. It's one of the worst films ever made in superhero history. But at least Ryan Reynolds made up for it for Deadpool. I mean, he's brilliant in that. Number 1. Batman and Robin. The worst superhero movie ever made. Has to be Batman and Robin. George Clooney as Batman, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, Chris O'Donnell as Robin, Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, and Ruby Silverstone as Batgirl. Terrible acting, terrible costume design, terrible sound editing, terrible script writing. The worst superhero movie ever created. And the way they made Bane, it's almost like he's so thick you can't even comprehend it. But in the comics, Bane is actually really intelligent. And what the hell? I can't even understand this. Why did they give the Bat suit and the Robin suit bat nipples? Literally, on the suit, there are nipples. Completely visible. Oh my god, it is just filled with terrible acting, terrible costumes. And Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, oh my god. There's so many cheesy ice puns, I can't even sleep at night. It is the worst superhero movie in existence. But these are just my opinions, guys. There are several other terrible superhero movies, such as, like, I don't know, off the top of my head, like Spawn. That was really crap. It was so bad, I can't even. But we're supposed to be getting a reboot, which would be good. But no disrespect to the actors. I mean, they're brilliant actors in other things. These just weren't their star roles. Well, that's it for my top 10 list, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment what you think down below, and I'll come back tomorrow to give you some origin stories. See you guys later.